Freddy and Jason are pop horror icons. They've been around our culture for almost 20 years, and each of them has become a symbol of all those things that collectively we as teenagers and then as adults are afraid of, so that they are the sum total of our current pop boogeymen.
This was always in the air, the two biggest boogeymen in town.
Well, this concept is not new, and I think New Line took it and said, let's do the contemporary version of the meeting of two ultra villains.
Freddy versus Jason is something that it's an idea that I came up with, putting the two of them together almost 10 years ago.
Paramount did at one point approach us, or we approached them with the idea of trying to do something, and they basically wanted what we wanted. They wanted us to license them the rights to Freddy Krueger and go off and really make their movie, which we were not anxious to do. So eventually Paramount lost whatever rights they had, and Sean Cunningham, who has been a friend of mine for a long time, approached us and asked us if this was something that we wanted to do.
At the very beginning, I said, gee, this could really be a good idea, but now that it's all come together and I finally get to see it, I say, this is a great idea. It really works well.
The idea kind of languished because it was difficult to find a production executive within New Line, up to and including our head of production at that time, who really cared a lot about it. When we changed our head of production, we renewed this imperative to Toby Emmerich that we got to find someone who's going to get behind this, and came up with a somewhat unlikely candidate, but we had this wonderful woman, Stokely Chapin, who likes the genre and could really jump in.
I had worked with a producer before and produced I Know What You Did Last Summer, and so I loved horror movies, and I always felt that they were, sort of a way to always find an audience, and that people are always going to love these movies. And 7 years ago, I heard the idea, and I was like, genius! Like, that's perfect! Like, what a great event picture. And then 7 years went by, and by coincidence, and I'd always wanted to work at New Line, but they called and I came over, and then I got Freddy vs. Jason as a project, and to me it was just meant to be.
Well, I've sort of been in bed with Freddy vs. Jason since 2000, since the millennium. I think I was sort of made my deal back then, and we've gone through several directors and several incarnations on the script.
We were somewhat stymied by trying to get a script together that really kind of made some sort of quality narrative sense. And that's what held us back even after we had all of these sort of two characters in place.
There had been a million drafts before. I mean, literally, I think 17, done by 12 writers.
70% of them probably were rewrites on the same story that all involved this cult called the Fredheads. And then Jason gets resurrected through his heart being thrown into a lake. So most of them were with that same storyline with a girl named Lizzie.
I was on a plane about 2 glasses of wine down last year, flying to London, and I met one of the executive producers of one of my favorite shows on television, King of the Hill, and he'd even done a draft of Freddy versus Jason, and he told me all of his gossip and his take on it.
We worked on another project for New Line, and they brought us in to kind of pitch our take. And I knew that it had been in development for like 10 years, so we just came at it a little bit differently, I think, than the rest of the people. We didn't really change the histories of the characters and that kind of things. So we wanted to take both histories and both characters as they were in the movies and then start from there.
Yeah, exactly.
That was sort of, our original take.
Keep it all intact, make it all count, don't discount all the other movies, and the fans will love you for it.
And so fortunately, there was a treatment done that had basically the sketched out story of what the movie is. That's the one done by Shannon and Swift. And when I started, I sort of read the treatment and thought, there's some problems here, but it looks pretty good. Let's see what we get when the script comes in. So we got a really good script in. It was overly long and overly complicated and very, very dense. And so we timed the script, came in at 2 hours, 28 minutes, and we're like, this may be the American Beauty of horror films, but it's not American Beauty, and it probably shouldn't be 2.5 hours long. So David Goyer came in, and what he did, honestly, was collapse everything good that was in it, and making scenes that were 3 scenes before into one scene, and when you do that, that one scene becomes a lot more dramatic and a lot more interesting.
And the goal was obviously just to make the film as short as possible. And the task that he had was, to make it, to cut it down without really losing any of the scenes. So a lot of the dialogue wound up getting changed, and he, I think he combined two characters at one point. And did a good job of keeping it short, but without losing the story.
I got involved to the extent of reading scripts as they were developed, interviewing directors that Stokely had previously vetted and brought to Toby and I.
I had made the sort of foolish, proposition to every agency that anybody who wanted to come in and meet, I would take the meeting with. So I probably took 60 meetings with directors of all kinds, from music video directors, commercial directors, people who'd made, one feature or a short, or everybody. And first, of course, we put together our top list of 5 or 6 people. Ronnie Yu was on that list. We went to him and he passed. I was like, okay, I expected that. We went to, Wes Craven, and, the sort of like this the top people in sort of making horror films.
There was a problem in finding somebody who was good and had the enthusiasm for it, in the same way that we had trouble finding a production executive to administer the project.
What was hard to find is there were people who loved the characters, who knew everything about them and had seen every movie 15 times, but didn't have the experience. And then there were people who had more experience, but kind of were like, oh yeah, I think I saw one back in the theater way back when. And we were like, what are you doing here? Like, why would you want to take this on if you don't care about these characters?
Then she approached Ronnie, his agent again. Is it possible that he might want to revisit this whole thing?
So we got him on the phone, and I kind of thought it was a lost cause, because I just expected him to say, thanks so much, for your interest, I really appreciate it, but no. And he was open to it, and we could tell, and so we kind of like kept reeling him in a little bit and said, well, why don't you just come here for a meeting and we can talk about it further? And he said, okay, and we're like, oh my God, he said, okay, he's gonna come.
And then Stokely brought me, I saw the 2 films that she suggested I see that would give me some feeling about the guy, which was The Bride with White Hair and the Chucky, Bride of Chucky, I guess. I was into brides. And I thought that they were quite well done, and the idea of having a Asian point of view and Asian style seemed to me to offer the possibility of bringing a new approach to a horror film than some of the more matter-of-fact, straightforward horror director.
When I was in Hong Kong, growing up in Hong Kong, and I watched a lot of those old on TV, old Hollywood monster movie, like the horror movie, like Vampire and Frankenstein versus Wolfman, or the Swamp Things, all that. And I just thought, this movie has to go back to the basic, because we see so many of this like CGI movie now. And one thing that keep in my mind when I'm shooting this movie is the film called Rocky. When I first saw the Rocky, the scene that really hit me is the scene at the end, the final fight, when Apollo beat the crap out of Rocky, but Rocky had the spirit to fight back. Even though his eyes all swollen and all that, he tell the trainer, cut it open. And that moment, like, I go, ooh, And then actually they cut it open, and the blood just spurts out, And that for me is raw. It's raw. It's not like all this, now you have all this wire work, now everybody is copying everybody, like, jumping everywhere, flying everywhere. So I said, oh, now you have these 2 monsters together now in a ring. It's almost like a WWF thing, wrestler thing. So I said, I should go back to that rawness, to that, like I said, tearing your eyes out, tearing your livers out, damage your kidney, and then the machete chopping your heads off, chopping the fingers off, that's all rawness, I think, and less of those like quick cut. Because usually now, because every time we get to an action sequence, it's quick cut. First of all, you don't know where they are, and then you lose the dynamic. So this time I just put a camera there. I told the second unit director, I said, just put a camera there and let them chop each other out. Like in a chopping board, go, and then blood going everywhere,